Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Nadex Morning Analysis. It is Monday, June 14th. I think that's Flag Day. I think it's Flag Day today. For some reason, that's just in my mind. I'll have to confirm that. My name is Todd Rich. I am with Nadex. With me from Keep Trading Simple is Brian Caprice. Brian and I are going to be talking about what's hot and what to be looking for in the markets today, and actually for much of this week. There is a big story that everyone's going to be talking about. But before Brian and I jump into it, I do need to share this disclaimer that trading involves risk. It may not be appropriate for everyone. That trading decisions that you make are solely your responsibility and at your own risk. And this is an educational session. Please do not construe anything Brian or I say as a buy or sell recommendation. We are doing this for your education purposes. So what are we going to be looking at today and for this week? All right, and the thing is there's just so much and it's all so intertwined. I gotta think it through here. So this week is going to be focused on the Fed week. It's going to be focused on the Fed week because starting tomorrow, the Federal Reserve starts its two-day meeting. And everyone's going to be curious. In fact, it used to be when times got like this, people were looking at the chairman's briefcase, trying to determine what they were thinking and what they might do based upon the thickness of the briefcase with how much paper was crammed in there. The meeting starts tomorrow. It's a two-day meeting on Wednesday. It's 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to get the economic projections. We're also for the U.S. We are also going to get the U.S. interest rate decision if they're going to change rates. There is almost no probability. In fact, I would say there's no probability, but you always have to hedge that they're going to do anything to change the interest rates. What we're really waiting to hear is the timing of when the Fed is going to taper their policy. So really, it's focused on the Fed, but it's really focused on the taper talk. Now, on Wednesday at 2:30, the Fed is going to have its press release. So everything between now and Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, when they announce all the numbers, and 2:30 when they have the press conference, it's going to be what is the Fed seeing? How are they going to position their policy? How are they going to talk about tapering? Now, if we're talking about inflation and interest rates, I've got a chart of gold up here right now. And in an interest rate environment where interest rates start going high, where we start seeing inflation, you would expect this chart to be doing something different. However, there is a new complication when you start looking at gold. That would be Bitcoin. There's a lot of traders who are using Bitcoin as a store of value outside of traditional assets, and it impacts gold. Now, gold has been that asset for thousands of years. Bitcoin has been that asset for thousands of hours.
Yeah,
but it's impactful. So there's a lot there. Brian, I want to kick it over to you. I know we'll take a look at what's going on in gold. If we're looking at inflation, I'm sure we're going to look at a chart of oil, because oil is showing the inflation.
Yeah, that was leading the inflation group.
Yeah, there it is. So we're going to see oil, and then we might do a quick little recap of equities. So I had to put all that in there. There's a lot to know this week. Let's get into it, and we'll do as much as we can today. We'll do it again tomorrow, and Wednesday morning we'll be right on the brink of it. So hopefully everyone joins us this week as we go through the focus on the Fed week and see what's going to happen with taper talks. So Brian, I'm going to flip this over to you.
Sure. First, Todd, I need to know, what is a briefcase? Because I feel like many listeners out there will have no idea what a briefcase is. I think you're aging yourself a little bit. I personally have never had a briefcase for work. I believe that is a tool my father used with a handkerchief. I just
maybe it's how many iPhones he's carrying because he's got so much data.
It could be, exactly, right. So anyway, today it's not a very big kind of action-packed day as far as economic news releases go. And it's a Monday. We don't typically see it. Although I will say this 9:30 p.m. release tonight, this monetary policy meeting notes, it's similar to kind of what our FOMC meeting notes are. That could be a big mover if we have kind of a very stagnant day. Why the Aussie is important, obviously, the Aussie is a proxy for gold this week. I mean, gold is just getting absolutely hammered right now. The market is getting a very interesting take. And as we saw last week, we had big inflation numbers, but yet the market just kind of shrugged it off. They're like, the Fed's not going to do anything. The Fed is basically, everybody's thinking they're a wet noodle at this point. And if you question inflation, check this out. Even though, every single currency pair right now that I have up, the major 8, every single one of them is green. If that's not inflation, I don't know what to tell you, right? I mean, how is it that everything versus everything else can all be green? It's not really possible, but that's what we got. As far as what you mentioned for the week, and again, this is very important to establish your trades today because, I'm a very, very big believer. The markets move to get themselves in the correct position to be able to trade a news release. Okay, a lot of times we see it go up or down right before a news release so they can get a better deal when it comes out. Almost like they know, right? Tomorrow, extremely important because we have the first of the inflation numbers. Actually, we have 2 gigantic news releases tomorrow. One is core retail sales. As expected to be much hotter than it was before. Again, also goes into that kind of inflationary, like, holy crap, we're doing really, really good. And then we have PPI. Now, you don't have to, I always say this, you don't have to know all the news releases. PPI is basically the cost of the goods and services when they're done and it's sold to us. So it's considered a total accumulation of what it costs us to get the supplies in, to build it, to send it back out, to market it, and then the cost of what it costs us later on. So PPI is almost like CPI in that one, but it's kind of the end process, not kind of the entire process. We have that tomorrow as well, and that's the first one. And then you can see Wednesday is just a ton of news. From FOMC all in there. We have CPI for Canada. I mean, the talk of the town is nothing but inflation. Now, with that said, a couple things that Todd mentioned that we got. First things first is Paul Tudor Jones. If you don't know who he is, he's a very popular guy in trading. He's been around forever. He called the market crash in 1987. Extremely smart individual. He's like another one of those, like if Warren Buffett was going to have like tea, like a Sunday tea, Paul Tudor Jones would be there. He's considered one of the greats. Interestingly enough, he is part of an older generation. But as you can see, he's been bullish Bitcoin for a while because, again, he believed, and the reason why he was bullish Bitcoin is because he believed in the prospect of higher taxes under the Democratic administration. Okay, but what he's saying is Paul Tudor Jones says bet heavily on every inflation train if the Fed keeps ignoring higher interest rates. We're kind of seeing that, right? So I mean, it's one of those things. They're ignoring, and here's what we're supposed to be hearing. This is not like an inside leak, but this is kind of what So it's an analysis of what's going to happen, what we're going to hear, that Powell's going to be forced to quantify what moderate overshooting is. I've mentioned this multiple times. Is it 2.5? Is it 3 when he says for a substantial period of time? What is that? Like, people got to know, right? They're saying that they're finally going to mention when the first hike could be signaled. We knew 2023, but they're kind of putting more substance behind that one. But here's the big thing, that the Fed will not be convinced of sustained pressure in June. That is the recipe. And again, that is why we're seeing the gold chart go through the floor. Now, last week we had that, it's like they got to acknowledge it. And it went up. And then all of a sudden there was no news, nothing, silence. It was crickets. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait a second, they're not going to say anything? Really? Really? Nothing? And then again, we have other people saying the Fed's going to ignore it. They're just going to be like, hey, listen, this is not substantial. And remember, for gold to maintain this kind of continued pressure, they have to acknowledge inflation. With no inflation, there's no gold. That's the way that the gold market works. Now, that is being coupled with what we're seeing with Bitcoin, which is extremely important. And again, we're not trading Bitcoin over here, but you got to understand that Bitcoin is now becoming kind of the third kind of spoke inside of the inflation talk. Okay, let me explain that real quick. Inflation used to be a battle between gold and the dollar index. And we can see that the dollar index is extremely high, but now showing signs of kind of topping, right? When we look to see what the inflation story looks like, it used to be this and then gold. Well, right now, 75% of people are net long gold. And what are we watching in the charts? We're watching the charts just get hammered. And again, this is how you take advantage of the retail trader. They see inflation, go long gold, but they're not. It's not there yet. Unless the Fed acknowledges it, it's not a place to be long in. Now, are we positioning for a long gold trade this week? I would say yes. I do feel that Powell is going to have to mention it. He's going to have to put some type of a date on interest rate. There's just no way at this point that they can't. If they don't, they've lost all credibility and they'll lose the rest of the power that they have left. There's just really nothing else. So as we're seeing gold drop, again, there's some levels here that we had talked about last week. Dropping this up to like a 4-hour chart, you can see that this has been such a drop in price. But now we have some levels where we had clean pullbacks. Question is, will we find that bottom somewhere in this area? And the question is, what will the U.S. trader do today? Will we be able to find something in here? And again, there's a couple different ways to play it. Now, I will say this. I do think it's very important that everybody stays in traditional assets. You can see that, Bitcoin is up, but I believe there's a lot of manipulation in this one. And I said there was a third spoke in it. I would be looking this week to find long gold opportunities. Here's why I would stay out of the Bitcoins in the crypto realm. We see this, that Bitcoin jumps as Elon, he suggests that Tesla could start accepting again. And the reason why, magically in 3 weeks, now all the Bitcoin miners are suddenly using energy-friendly ways to generate it. They're not doing anything different, but they're saying it. And again, they've magically changed how they're doing it. If you've talked about, we've seen Ethereum, we've seen a couple of the other coins saying, no, it's the way that Bitcoin was designed. Its mining methods are what make it so environmentally unfriendly. And at the same time, this is what we're hearing back and forth too. And again, this is May 16th, guys. He's clarifying that Tesla has not sold any Bitcoin, but then we see their earnings that they made $272 million inside of their earnings for selling it. So I would say right now, all things aside, and again, the market is also believing it. If you look at that side, Ethereum is actually down today. Bitcoin is the only one up. If it was truly an inflationary play to go towards Bitcoin, all the cryptos would be up. They're not.
They're not. It's just, and yeah. Brian and I were joking a little bit before this is, what is it? I think it's more than 60% of Bitcoin is mined in China. Mm-hmm. And China over the weekend did not stop using coal.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, they're doing this all with solar power now.
Yeah. Suddenly. Yeah.
No.
and guys, look, Ethereum red, Dogecoin down. So again, it's purely an Elon's, and the reason why is not like I don't personally believe in cryptos. I know a lot of people do. They've made money off it. That is absolutely great. But look at it like this. The reason why we're seeing such a big jump and why is there an outliner? It's because of Elon saying that we're accepting it, we're not accepting it, we're accepting it, we're not accepting it. Oh wait, we're going to accept it. Okay, we need to sell some for our second quarter earnings. Okay, we're not accepting it again. There's an extreme risk from the government finally saying, you know what? We're tired of the manipulation. Bitcoin is no longer an allowable asset to be accepted for payment in the United States. Just like other countries like India and China have already proposed, Bitcoin goes through the roof and then you guys lose a lot of money. Okay? What I am saying, though, is gold, the way that it is tanking right now, everybody except Powell has acknowledged we have inflation. Okay? The way to play inflation when we have a rising inflation / rising interest rate scenario is through traditional assets like gold. I'm always a gold bear, but I really feel like you have to be able to find some way to go long, particularly, again, with the dollar index the way that it is right now. Okay? Now, with that said, there's another asset out there that we're seeing a lot of inflation in, and bam, that would be oil. Okay? Oil is up 1.3% today already. All right? We've talked about a little big scenario for a long time about these little bigs. And again, even here where we had a pretty decent and then a lot of movement. Monday morning so far, we've had a little scenario. We've seen a pullback, and then at about 7:30 this morning, we've started to see a rise higher. Remember, there's a lot going on in the Middle East. If you guys didn't know, I can never say his last name, but Benjamin is out. There's a new guy in. And again, the big question is, what is that going to do for the price of oil? He's already made comments over this weekend about how Iran will not get nuclear power. They're going to stop it at all costs. So will that increase oil today? It definitely has a very high possibility. We are in an upper time frame area where we were looking for shorts, but right now, let's see what the U.S. trader does with this. As this continues to unfold, I do think we could also, again, seeing inflation, again, when the dollar is good, it's good going for oil. I do think we have a scenario here where if we get any type of pullback, we could look for oil to go higher as well.
And we have seen, by the way, when the inflation numbers have come out, some of the more significant inflation numbers where it's impacting at the highest are things like energy and food.
Yeah, and those have been the two biggest. Energy was up tremendously. If you don't know what energy inflation is, go look to see what your gas prices are now versus where they were last year, and that's energy inflation, particularly in oil.
Yeah, that's inflation. So All right, we covered a lot today. We are going to do this again tomorrow morning. It's just so all intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got the chart of opportunities. If you wanted to look at oil on Nadex, they're the binary options would be probably one way to play this, but we can clearly see oil in an uptrend. Oil in an uptrend. Gold, um, it's just getting decimated, which is rather interesting. But we know we've taken a look at that, and it's sort of a combination, right? It's a combination in that you won't necessarily see that the inflation numbers push the price of gold higher until the Fed actually starts doing something. So, and we know that they're not talking about doing things until 2023. Now, maybe they might move that timeline up. We got to listen to what their policy is. But then you've got the double whammy with how cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, is impacting the price of gold as people are moving. It's one cannibalizes the other. So when you see people pulling money out of Bitcoin, they're often moving it into gold, and when they're moving it out of gold, they're moving it into Bitcoin. I don't know if that's going to be something that we're always going to see going forward, but the move in Bitcoin right now, a little comical, because it's all of a sudden all the people,
We're accepting
60%
it. We're not
of it,
accepting it. Yeah.
people, but gold, Bitcoin being mined in China is now being done so.
Environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
Environmentally friendly suddenly.
And an environmentally friendly because they've got special coal that they're burning now in China. There's a little, it doesn't pass the sniff test. So sometimes you just got to think about it yourself. With that, again, we got a lot going on. If you're new to the markets, I just want to tee it up. If you don't know how to trade FX, Brian threw out the dollar index, and right now we've seen some dollar strength, but it's sort of setting up for some weakness. We are going to be doing a boot camp next week, next Tuesday. And in fact, I should drop the link in, but maybe I'll just do that tomorrow. I'll tease up, or you can catch it on the Nadex website. We're going to be doing an entire boot camp next Tuesday. It's free. You register and you'll have access to the recordings as well as the slide decks. So if you can't join us next Tuesday, or maybe you'd want to catch a little bit of it, it's a boot camp on how to day trade FX, how to day trade the foreign exchange markets. So if you're new and you want to get some fundamentals, plus there's some great trading strategies. Brian's going to be doing a whole session on parabolic moves. I think that's what you're doing, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I got to remember.
Parabolic retracements.
Parabolic retracements. All right.
Yep.
With that, let's get ready. It's going to be a busy week. We will catch you again tomorrow morning. Good luck in the markets, everyone. Thanks.